in the church, because people are arguing over whose gift is greater, right? Oh, I can prophesy, so my gift's greater. I can speak in tongues, so my gift is greater. So what's happening? What is Paul saying? So in almost all of Paul's epistles, what is Paul doing? Generally, just like I'm being like really basic. What is he doing to churches? He's yelling at them. He's getting mad at them because they're doing dumb things. And he's like, what's wrong with you? You guys are not getting the point. He set a church there and they've missed the point. So what is Paul trying to set right here in this first 11 verses? What word keeps coming up? Father?
Another. It's just someone else.
Okay, there's another word.
Spirit?
Spirit. Okay, saying what? What is he saying about the Spirit?
The same Spirit.
The same Spirit is giving them all these gifts, right? So he's setting that line that you guys are all arguing about who's better, but it's the same Spirit that's giving you these gifts. So the whole argument is moot, right? People know. Do you guys know what moot means? It's like null. It doesn't have any worth, right? Okay. So he's telling them from the beginning that what they're arguing about is nonsense, because the Spirit is what is giving them all their gifts. So for us, you guys all have different gifts, right? And that's kind of what we want to bring out in leadership, but we're also, again, we're going to bring it back to this idea of community. So I have certain gifts, and Charles has certain gifts, like he reads Corinthians really well, and Ashlyn has certain gifts, Roshan, everyone here has certain gifts that you're good at. And there are things you're bad at too. I'm bad. There's a lot of things I'm bad at. And so instead of saying, oh, his gifts are better for the church than mine, or my gifts are better for the church than hers, we're supposed to say, how do we put all these gifts together? Because all these gifts, all these abilities, talents, various things that we're able to do are given by the same Spirit, right? The same Holy Spirit. So that's what Paul's reminding us through these first 11 verses. All right, continue. Charles, you can give it off to whoever you'd like. Verses 12 through 26. What is Paul saying here? Paul's kind of shifted the conversation, right? So the first part of the conversation, or the letter, or this chapter of the letter, he's saying, you guys are arguing about these things, but they're all from the same Spirit. He kind of shifts the conversation here, saying what? Someone give me a summary. It's, pretty straightforward. Roshi, you pick up anything?
That you shouldn't be prideful for the works you've done.
Okay, good. Why?
Because whatever work you've done, it's all equal in God's eyes.
Okay, good. So going off of that, what else is he saying about the different parts?
That they have to work together because we're one body.
Exactly. And so that's like Sabrina kind of hit it on the head, right? And he's saying that no part of the body can say to another part of the body, I don't need you, right? Or you're not important. Or because he's saying that all the parts of the body are necessary for the body. So what is he talking about when he's saying the body? What's he referring to? The church, correct, right? And so Paul in a later letter will explain that who is the head of these body parts. The only important part is what? The head, right? And the head of the church is Jesus, right? Okay, the answer for everything. So if Christ is the head, that is the most important part. But no other part of the body is more important or less important than each other. But everything works for the head of the church, which is Christ, so that this one body as a whole can move forward, and share Christ's love with the for the whole world. And that's what he's trying to say here, right? So even with our things, again, what we're saying, we all have different gifts, and Paul has said that they're all from the same Spirit, but it's important that we all work together. And I think that this part is very hard for us to understand, even though on words and in paper it makes a lot of sense, but it's hard for us to understand that concept, that certain things are less, that we're all equally important. The Holy Church, especially the Orthodox Church, is very unique in that we believe that, we see like Achin up there, Tirumini up at the altar, and we're like, that guy's really important. He's really important for the church. And absolutely he is. But Tirumini, Achin, Chamachin, these people that we hold in high esteem are nothing without their congregation. They're nothing with the whole church. They themselves are a part of the church. So even those people who we see as high people, people whose work is more important for the work of the church than maybe what I do or maybe what you do, Paul is telling us otherwise. Paul is telling us that what you do as a lay person, as a guy or girl, someone in high school, middle school, college, whatever it may be, is equally as important as what Tirumini does. Equally important as what Achin does. And that's really hard for us to understand. And because of that, we tend to give everything to Achin. Give everything to Chamachin. Give everything to those leaders, So in our case, we make Subin and Sabrina do everything, or make Sharon do everything, because we say, those people are more important than us. But the work that you do are just equally as important as the work they do. That's, I think, very important for us to understand. Paul is showing that to us, that these people who are arguing about who's better, he's pointing out that all of you are integrally important for this whole thing to work, for this whole machine to work. And if you take one part out, it doesn't work. A story I wanted to share. This actually happened. I was not planning on sharing this, but I read it last night as part of, I have homework already for school starting Monday. And there's a story about Simeon the Stylite. Who's Simeon the Stylite? Anyone know? You guys have heard the name?
Mm-hmm.
Where?
In the movie The Saint.
Huh?
In the movie The Saint.
In the movie The Saint. Okay, I didn't see that movie. Where else? In Qurbana, do you hear his name?
Fifth of them.
Fifth of them, right? Okay. So there's a story of Simeon the Stylite. What does stylite mean? Anyone know? So Simeon's his name. The Stylite. Pillar. So he actually lived on a pillar. That's what he did. He lived on a pillar for the majority of his life. He came down, and people think a misconception about Simeon is that people thought he stayed there the whole time, but he would come down to help heal the sick and pray for the sick, go to do things he was still a part of the community. But regardless, he lived on that pillar as a way to remove himself from the world and devote his life to prayer. Okay, so this story about Simeon the Stylite is written by Jacob of Sarug. Also, you guys, he's also written. We also hear about him in Thubden. Okay, so Jacob of Sarug, he actually wrote, besides Ephraim, Saint Ephraim the Syrian, Jacob of Sarug wrote the second most amount of songs that our Holy Church uses. Okay, and he writes a story about how Simeon the Stylite, living up on a pillar, being an old man, his foot gets gangrene. If you guys know what that is, that's really gross, and you have to amputate your foot. And so he amputated his foot, and before there's this beautiful hymn and poem that he says to his foot. And it's really weird. He's basically holding his foot in his hand and talking to it. And but in that he's saying that, thank you for all you've done. It's because of your feet that I've been able to walk toward the Lord, because of this foot, and I will see you again at, right, we know the bodily resurrection, which we proclaim, we confess in the Nicene Creed, right? We acknowledge the resurrection of the dead and look for the new life in the world to come, right? And so he's saying that I will see my foot again, but he's saying that even though this foot, right, the foot, people's feet smell weird, they look weird, they're kind of gross body parts. But even in that, he's saying bye to it. He's saying bye to this foot that he kind of has to throw away, because that foot has been integrally important in his life, in his Christian walk, both physically and spiritually toward Christ. Those feet are the reason he's able to climb the pillar. Those feet are the reason that he might be able to go to church, that he is able to walk to those, right? So he understood that every single part of his body that God gave him was necessary for the work of Christ. So now Paul is expanding this further, right? Paul is saying that every single one of us, every single part of the church's body, whether we be the eye, the ear, the nose, the fingers of the church, we all know these are metaphors, right? You're not actually hands and just a hand or a foot. But whatever part it might be, these pieces are all integrally important. They're all very important for the work of the church. Okay, so the next part, which is kind of the most important part, so that we can tie it back to this idea of community, I want Ash, can you read it? 20 verses 12:27 to 13:13. What's important in this part? Come on, guys. He says it. The greatest of these is love. Okay, so 1 Corinthians 13, It's a chapter that we're all like, oh my God, I'm so in love with this boy. I'm so in love with this girl. This chapter's about us. It's not. It's not about you and that boy. It's about the church. Okay? And so this is very important, right? Paul sets up this entire chapter. He writes 31 verses saying, these are the gifts that God gives. They're all from the Holy Spirit, and they're all for the one body. And then he kind of says, but, right? It's like a big but, a big pause. He says, all of these things don't matter if you don't have love. And whose love is he specifically speaking of? Right? Who? Okay, guys, come on. These are Sunday school answers. Jesus' love, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to have the love of Jesus Christ? What does it mean to demonstrate the love of Jesus Christ? It doesn't mean just being nice to people. What does it mean? What did it mean? What does it mean that Christ loved us? Sacrifice. Very good. That's exactly it. There's no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends, right? That's what Christ says himself. That's what it means to be the love in the Holy Church. And that's actually when we talk about, people use it for their marriage, and absolutely, I know I made a joke earlier, you can absolutely use this to demonstrate your marriage. But in that, even that marriage is not romantic love. The church is speaking of marriage as sacrificing to each other, as dying to each other, so that you can become one for the work of the Holy Church. And that's what marriage is. And that's what the whole Holy Church is. That this idea that love has to be the prevalent, the most important thing. And I think the most powerful part of this is he says that love never fails. Whether there are prophecies, they will fail. There are tongues, they will cease. There is knowledge, it will vanish away. And these things are really important things, right? We know about the prophets in the Old Testament. Their prophecies are powerful. They became true. But they happened and then it ended. Right? The tongue, same thing. Tongues might reveal that I have some sort of special connection with God. While we don't see tongues as much anymore, but even though we see that, it might have some sort of special connection with God, but when the tongue stops, what's left? When my knowledge stops, as someone who goes, me going to seminary, or you guys, even at school, the leadership styles you get at school, the leadership qualities you get at school, the academic skills that you can use for the church, those things are very important. But what happens if those things go away? What's left? What's left to hold the church together? It has to be the love of Jesus Christ. And so that's where we're trying to take this whole camp for today and tomorrow. It's this idea that love binding us together as one body. And Paul lays this out brilliantly. If you guys know the background of Paul knew everything. That's what he's saying here. I am very knowledgeable. What Paul knew what we now consider the Old Testament in and out. He was a brilliant scholar of the Holy Scriptures. That's why he cites it like this all throughout his books. And he's saying that doesn't matter if he doesn't have love. And that's how's that exemplified in his life? Excuse me, I think I spit on somebody.
It was for love.
Yeah. How's that exemplified in his life? How does Paul miss the point? Come on, guys. What happened with Paul? What was Paul before he became Paul?
He used to persecute.
Killed Christians. Very good. Okay? His name was Saul, right? Saul of Tarsus. He was just as brilliant then. He read the entire Scriptures. He knew all of the Scriptures. But he still didn't understand that Jesus Christ had come full of love, with the love for the entire universe, for all of mankind, and had died. Had died so that the church could come into the world, so that the church could be a representative of Christ in the world. His knowledge didn't get him there. His ability to prophesy didn't get him there. Someone's ability to give tongues didn't get him there. The only way that he was able to get to that point was when Christ directly interacted with him on the road to Damascus, and he was literally filled with the love of Jesus Christ. So this has to be what fills us. This has to be the starting point from where we begin. It has to begin with us loving each other and loving the world. Loving the world meaning the people of the world. You know, the scriptures tell us not to love the world, but we are called to be in the world, right? If we were not supposed to be of this world, God wouldn't put us here. But we're supposed to be in the world, but yet not of the world. And that means to love sacrificially, to love people before yourself, to love God. If you love God before yourself, you will love others before yourself. And then only through that can the church grow. And we see that through the stories of the holy saints, both men and women, right? We see that they gave themselves up, they gave their whole lives up initially for God and then for the Holy Church. And through that, the church was able to grow. And so now we're going to we're going to break up in discussion groups and we're going to speak about